Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. Welcome, everyone, to It's a Controls Problem. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. I'm here with the great Matthew Vanberg. Matthew, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastically.
And I have such, I'm so excited for this. I've been waiting for this. So we have a special guest here tonight, Ed Merwin. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he is the Director of Strategic Business at Tritium. But one of the milestones that he just had here is that he celebrated his 50th anniversary with Honeywell. So Ed, big congratulations and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, Ed, man, I can't imagine what it's like to be with a company for 50 years. I can't. I'm trying to wrap my head around. I mean, the longest so far I've been with a company is 8 years, and hopefully, I'll have longevity here. But I mean, I've been in the controls industry for over 30, but still 50 years you have been in the business. So, you've been a part of this controls world for now decades. So can you take us how you actually first got into building automation?
Okay, kind of by accident. I was at Virginia Tech, and I was in the engineering program there, hanging out there for a couple of years. I spent more time at the fraternity house, frankly, than I did in the classroom. So I took a break. And from Virginia Tech, great school, by the way. And I came back to Richmond, Virginia, and I said, I'm going to go find a job. So I started looking. My dad was a mechanical engineer and chief engineer at American Tobacco. So I always kind of was interested in technology and mechanics and those sort of things. So I was just looking at all the jobs out there, and a job popped up from the Virginia Employment Commission with Honeywell. And mentioned to my dad that, I was going to interview there. And I got an interview. And he said, well, read these books. So he gave me the train engineering manual. He gave me a carrier manual. And I read through those, spent a lot of time in those, at least trying to understand what Honeywell did. And he kind of explained to me because he had worked with Honeywell a lot. And then I had an interview the next day. And I got the job immediately. So they didn't wait around in those days. They said, okay, you're hired, and had me fill out the paperwork. So that was in July 16th, 1975.
Wow.
So by accident, I got to Honeywell, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, sometimes it's all about accents. I mean, really, that's what the controls industry is, right? Like, you have very few people that are like, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be in controls. Yep. Now, I'm kind of an exception to that because my dad kind of bred me for controls. And so usually I tell people in my in my trainings, I kind of get like the Matthew McConaughey's like, I was driving a Lincoln before they paid me to drive a Lincoln. I was doing controls before they paid me to do controls. But Ed, who were your early mentors or influences in the industry?
Well, that's a great question because I was very fortunate. When I first came to work at Tritium, I was what's called a tech rep, and I was working on the roof, right? And there's a good fellow named Earl Kelly who kind of took me under his wing. He came with a good, strong mechanical background. He knew some controls, and he taught me really the HVAC side because Honeywell was going to send me to class, right? I spent 5 weeks in Minnesota at the basic technical training, and this was before DDC. This was all electronic controls, Wheatstone Bridge stuff, and Honeywell Series 90. But Earl really showed me the ropes and carried me around. And at the time, we had a great service department, and frankly, it really helped me get grounded. And then I did a lot of learning. Like I said, it's fortunate to have my dad as a mentor who helped me. Each day I'd say, I ran into this, and he would explain to me what that was. But I kind of picked up pretty quick. And I had an interest in the service, but they also gave me the chance once I went to basic training and came back. They said, "Hey, we want to, go through this automation training." And frankly, the first day I started at Honeywell in Richmond, Virginia, they had something called the BAS Center, and they were monitoring buildings remotely with digital controls, Delta 2000. And I watched an operator there turn on a chiller 10 miles away. And the reason we know it started because we had a intercom, and I could hear it wind up. So I kind of got hooked on wanting to do more of the advanced stuff. So it worked out well that they sent me to training, and then an opening came up for an automation technician in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Virginia, and I actually relocated after about 6 months in Richmond, and spent a lot of years in the Virginia Beach area, working on some of the very first automation systems that Honeywell created, right? Delta 2000, then the Delta 1000, and we're talking about 16K of memory in a building automation system handling an airport. So it's pretty interesting to see that transition. So
Good. That's I mean, it's an incredible story, that you have, and I definitely want to definitely pick your brain a little more on that. So, like, before I get into that question, though, what I want to know is, was there a moment when you realized that that a system like Niagara would just change everything?
Oh, yes, I think so. I'd already been at Honeywell quite a while when Niagara came out. I'd been at Honeywell for almost 25 years, and I was asked to come to Minnesota and meet with Dennis Tuck, who was a product manager for Honeywell. And he said, "Hey, we just acquired a mechanical contractor that uses this system from a company called Tritium. It's called the Niagara Framework." And I looked into it. And I said, "Wow, this is truly game changer," because browsers were just starting out, right? In getting more powerful. People weren't using them, if at all, in building automation. I think Andover had an early browser because John Petsy, who was actually came to work at Tritium, he was at Andover, and they were doing some browser-based stuff. But yeah, that day in probably 1999 era, I said, "This is really something," and we said, "Hey, we're going to introduce this into Honeywell." And I was managing Honeywell's direct channel at the time, where we had 100 system integrators selling them traditional building automation, Honeywell XL 500 and those sort of things. But we knew this was something at that point. And then when I hit the road with Dennis and I hit the road and talked to all our system integrators, the excitement was just amazing, palatable. Let me try to get that word out. But it really was just something that we knew was going to change things, because one, it was the browser made a big difference, but it was connected to the internet. It was so powerful because in those days we pretty much had Milan works. Milan was still pretty difficult to deal with, but it made it simple. It really did. Tritium had done a great job of bringing that in. And back then, it wasn't even released yet at that point. So we started with LAN, worked very well with the Honeywell XL10s line of LAN devices, which are really rock solid, very good devices. So just the fact that you could go in, automatically learn devices, drop and drag that in, and then hit it with a browser was just an amazing feat. It really was.
Go ahead. Sorry, Ed. Go ahead.
Well, and then I'll follow that up. Then the first time when we got it and showed it to end customers, and like I said, it was super exciting. It was something brand new, and that was something else. And of course, I worked with Honeywell then, and I transitioned to Tritium. But I knew what was really amazing when we went to ASHRAE that first year, and our booth was packed with hundreds and hundreds of people just trying to get into the booth to see what we were doing.
That's awesome. I remember my first time using Niagara actually was my dad's company, or he used to work for, was and I think you know my dad. He his original company that he worked for when he was a young warthog was a company called Machinery and Equipment, or M&E Sales, and they were based out of Baltimore, Maryland.
Yep.
And so when when Honeywell started acquiring them, we knew it was because of tritium, because they were one of the M&E Sales actually started using it, and that's where I started. They're like, hey, you need to learn this, and I was like, okay. I mean, I'm not old enough to even go work for a company, but sure, I'll learn it, because like I remember when we had Signal for front end. And I really liked Signal. And then, if you were dealing with like Robert Shaw or DMS, which was great too. But yeah, seeing Niagara, even from its infancy to, what it is now, such a transition, and to see how it has changed over the years has been, truly remarkable. Like, it's interesting. It's like every company starts somewhere, from a place of, like, yeah, we've got this here, like for example, like Niagara Mods, right? Like, they've kind of taken, the graphics scheme by storm. And so a lot of people want them. And, some people are like, man, is it really worth the certificate? I'm like, well, that's how Tritium started. Like Tritium was a small one, and they started to get certificates, and all of a sudden here they are. Now it's it's an industry recognized certificate that, that people have. So starting in, obviously in 1975 and moving forward, you've seen parts of even pneumatics into parts of early digital controls, and now like true on DDC. Like, what was that process like for you to kind of see how all that transitioned over your years?
Yeah, I mean, pneumatics was the basic. When I first went to school, I mean, they taught me how to do boiler burner controls. We still had actuators that had vacuum tubes in them, right? So we just transitioned to more Wheatstone bridge type stuff, the Series 90, which is fantastic control line by Honeywell. So as I eased into that, I had the really good basics of learning that. Pneumatics were serviced by the pipe fitters, but we all learned about pneumatics. I actually used to teach a class at Old Dominion University, where I went back and ended up getting my engineering degree finally. But I taught a class in pneumatics there that was very popular at night. And so what was really cool, if you understood pneumatics, you could understand logic, because that's all pneumatics is. So what was really interesting is we had pipe fitters that learned how to seprogram because it was easy to them. A receiver controller was a PID loop, right? Low selectors were, ands and ors and those types of things. So they really grasped it really well. And I also had a great mentor, another mentor I had, Max Lyons. He taught me the construction business. He taught me about, estimating pneumatics, and then selling pneumatics and bidding pneumatics and writing specs and creating drawings for consulting engineers. So we already dealt with the theory of time, day, night, time clocks, and those sort of things. So moving into automation was reasonably easy for me because I had the good basics. But it was really amazing to see, how much time it saved, even in the early days when all you had was basically time clock functionality. But I remember I used to maintain the Norfolk International Airport, big Delta 2000 system. Just to walk across that property would take you, 30 to 45 minutes to get from one mechanical room to the other. So utilizing the building automation system at the time was really pretty cool. Where in the old days, I did go to some hospitals that had a board in the basement that might have, 300 pneumatic gauges downstairs, where you looked at what was going on in the hospital. But it was really some cool transition that we went to that. The first direct digital job I did was really the main one was Christian Broadcast Network in Virginia Beach, Virginia. That was bringing over a Honeywell XL Classic that came over from Germany. And that was a very sophisticated thermal storage, ice on pipe system, huge project, went very fast. And that was the first project where we actually put a IBM PC on top of a direct digital controller. So that really, it's just amazing how things transitioned from there and went really fast. I guess that's why my time at Honeywell, it's 50 years. It just doesn't seem like it because the industry just changed constantly. So it kept everything exciting.
Good. Just hearing the passion in your voice is just nothing but inspiring. And like, for me, like, I love everything about controls. And, I continuously, Matthew knows, like I'm up till, times 2, 3 in the morning working on something. Mark Peacock usually wakes up around that time anyway. So he and I usually already start talking about stuff, but I'm continuously trying to, to break things. Like while I was waiting for you to come on, I'm actually in the process of creating a converter that actually converts the wires on a wire sheet to knobs on a wire sheet, just to look a little more. Because I hate all the wires, I really do, and so like I don't want to put text blocks in front of my blocks anymore to create the knobs. So I'm working on something like that to do that. But anyway, here's something here that I think that you'll probably get a little chuckle of. Here's a question: if someone says, "Here's my problem, how can technology fix it?" How do you start thinking through a solution?
First, I want to understand their real problem and what's driving it, and do they need technology or not to fix it? Okay, so I started a lot of basics because, I guess I learned early on, particularly in sales, I would throw out the technology first, and I probably wasn't as good a listener until I learned the hard way a couple of times, that I wasn't connecting. So yeah, the first thing I do is really understand what the problem is, that they looked at it, and I try to understand somebody's business, and I enjoy doing that. And I tell people the one tool that has helped me so much in my career is, frankly, Google. People call me up, they said, "Ed, I got this problem." Well, the first thing I would do is go to Google. And in early days, not everybody even had a PC and a browser to do that, right? People in the field didn't. The techs didn't have PCs. They had, Simpson meters. So that's my first case, is to look at that and then decide, really what does it, what fixes it. Some things you can fix with a pneumatic device, or some things you can fix with a thermostat. Some things need DDC to fix it. So I kind of take that tack, and I learned that. I don't want to say the hard way, but I learned it as the better way to do that. So I don't think we all, sometimes as an industry, understand, let's find the problem. Sometimes we're trying to take the technology and find a problem to fix, instead of doing it the other way, of trying to fix the problem first.
That's a really good way to, it's a really good way to think about it. I used to irritate one of the salesmen I worked with at a company called ECS, or Engineer Control Solutions. Now they were bought by Climatech, and Lee pretty well. So a salesman he had, and I love the guy to death. His name is Steve, and he sold a job here in Charleston, and it was a two pipe conversion, and Siemens was in there, and so it was a quick job, and they're like, "Hey, Charles, can you do this?" "Okay, sure, fine, I will." And he's like, "Yeah, they had to replace the chiller 3 times, blah, blah, blah. So they think that the Siemens system doesn't work. And so they're coming in us." I'm like, "Well, what's the real problem?" And so, when they were going through it, I went down there. I was like, "Oh, the 2-pipe system, the changeover valves were going in, they were going together instead of opposite of one another. So either it was all going through the chiller or all going through the boiler. And there was nothing ever closing one to recirculate water until you had enough cold, until the water was cold enough to actually go through the chiller. So they would just send 180-degree water through the chiller every time. I'm like, well, that's a problem. So we just put the valves on the 2 outputs, and they're like, was that all that really needed? I was like, yep. And they're like, so we just bought the system for nothing. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. You bought the system, but it helped help discover what the actual problem was, because they were just going to wire it up the way it was originally and then create new programming. And I'm like, well, that's not the case. So you're right. I think that is one of those situations where people go in and think they just need new controls, whether it's understanding the true fundamental problem that you have. Maybe you have an oversized coil that's doing something, or, maybe you just have faulty equipment that's causing the issue. But instead, you've just literally put lipstick on a pig, and you still have the same one, and you still have the same issues. So I think that's a really great way to think about it. What is a memorable? I mean, obviously you've consulted with a lot of people and fixed a lot of problems over the years. So what is a memorable or complex integration problem that you helped solve, and what made it work?
Oh gosh, it's I deal with those every day, which makes it fun. I think what we've done is going to. Let me give you a recent one, because they go back. But we had a customer with a very old building automation system, and it had been hacked into. Right, it was an old proprietary system, and it had been exposed to the internet, and somebody got in there, hit it with some ransomware, really messed a lot of things up. But just basically what we're able to do is say, you know what, we've got this old system. We have a good, nice, robust driver to connect to it. We put Niagara on top of it, and was able to completely isolate it and make it cyber secure. Right. That was just a quick fix to a super major problem. Right. Customer just really had some real big problems, and I didn't solve the issue. One of our SIs did. Right. But those are the types of things that we've done. We've also worked with customers that, like you said, one of them with plumbing issues. They wanted to know, they had issues where kids were breaking into the schools, and they were really having a lot of problems with it. And what we did was, one thing we figured out, what they were doing is they were, opening up all the faucets, just trying to do some damage. And we said, we can actually monitor the water flow. We've already got that, but we can give you an alarm when the water flow comes at abnormal hours. And so if the burglar alarms don't catch them, you know what? If you see a big water flow at midnight, well, either you got a busted pipe or some kids broke in and turned all the faucets on and trying to flood the place. So that was just kind of some unique things that we've done over the years. Other things of taking cameras. And when we see, somebody walking in on the camera at night, is turning in all the lights all over the school facilities, including the parking lot lights, to light it up. So when the police come or somebody comes in, they feel safer because they have plenty of parking lot lights. The lights in the school came on. It makes them easier to go in, and when somebody does a break-in. So real practical stuff is what I get. Say it was sort of an easy fix, but it fixed a real big problem. So, and we've done sites, that I will use convenience stores, and one that we do a lot is Wawa. Mm-hmm. And what we've been able to do there, we connect to refrigeration. Why? Because of food safety is one thing, right? You want the Cokes to be cold, but it's more important that if somebody leaves a refrigerator door open and it's got dairy products in there, you could have issues with spoilage and losing product. So something as simple as, while you're monitoring the refrigeration, make sure that the doors are open in these stores. So we monitored that. Then they told us, by the way, we have this company that comes and pumps out our grease traps twice a week. It's costing a lot of money. What can we do? So we monitored the grease trap, and we're able to knock down how many trips they take to pump out grease traps. They asked us to monitor their food. Their ovens actually have a protocol, an S&MP protocol, that we're able to write a driver to, and we actually monitored the kitchen equipment, because if you're cooking subs and making cheesesteak sandwiches, if you can't cook, you're losing revenue. And that moved into gas pumps. So we monitor the gas pumps, not only what's going on in the tank, but also is the credit card machine working at the gas pump? So there's a lot of unique things that we did there. And that's in a very small footprint, but extremely high value there, right? Because we're saving them money and we're saving them when they're keeping the revenue flowing. So that was one of the most rewarding ones I'd say I'd ever done.
And they also monitor the coffee pots, the coffee alarms.
The water feeding the coffee pots, big revenue, right?
Yep.
So it's really, those are the kind of things where you're working with a customer that's so forward thinking, and they gave us a compliment that said, you're part of our business success, not just saving energy, but helping our business. And they were very forward thinking about that. But also in those days, we had to make sure that if we were doing that Niagara, that they have a lab there, that they have to run their credit card machines and do all this testing because they wanted to make sure that we could sit on the network with their revenue generating, equipment like cash registers and those sort of things. So really just a great relationship where both of us kind of sat in a room and figured out ways that we could help solve, not necessarily solve a problem, but and improve a process.
Mm-hmm. Yep. HVAC Concepts is a big part of that too.
Absolutely. They're the ones that brought that to us.
Yep.
And they had a great relationship and were able to do that. And again, with a very forward-thinking owner with an outstanding system integrator, right?
Yep.
And we're sitting there just saying, hey, we can help do that, right?
Yep. When you had Kevin and Dan.
Oh, yes.
Rest in peace, Kevin and Dan. Dan's retired, quote unquote, but he's still bored. He still wants to go and do all the things.
Dan was one of our earliest adopters and trained. It probably came to training before it was even official training to get started. So, like I said, great partner for many, many, many years.
Yeah, very, very, very sharp. I was always impressed with them. I've known Dan for 14 years. Great guy. Just really, the company was great too. Corey, he moved on and he's now at Data Equip and all that. And so seeing all that is really amazing. I tell you what, let's switch things a little bit. It's been a hot topic more recently, open systems. And so what do you think, in your opinion, or from your perspective, what do you think is still misunderstood about open systems in the industry?
Well, we had a different definition that we started. And frankly, the person, John Petsy, wrote a white paper for us 25 years ago. What is open, right? Well, and even 25 years ago, the reason Tritium got in business is in Jerry Frank, he worked for Robert Shaw, and a lot of customers would come in and we'd go to a school district and there'd be 5 PCs, the Robert Shaw PC, the Honeywell PC, the Johnson PC, and everybody else's, right? So Jerry thought, there's something wrong here. We need something that's a little bit more universal. You shouldn't have to have 5 separate proprietary systems to run a school district. And then Jerry, the great deep thinker that he is, and his son, Brian Frank, brilliant coder that he is, along with who at the time was working with John Sublett, they said, we have to fix this problem. So we figured out there's open means a couple things. First of all, it says, you've got to talk to a lot of different protocols. Whether that at the time we didn't even have back yet. LineWorks was just starting out, but you have to be able to talk to the Barber-Cohen system, whether that might, what protocol that would be, Johnson N2, Honeywell C-Bus. So Jerry's idea was we have to create connectors and drivers to these different protocols that are there, along with Modbus, which was pretty mature at that time. And LineWorks, that's the first thing we have to do. So that's the first openness to connectivity. But then we got to thinking as well, you got to be able to openly distribute it. So you got to think of a channel that you can have that's independent, right? It started off as very independent dealers, like-minded, that wanted to be able to connect to these and provide outstanding service. So open distribution comes into there. But then also what Jerry says, you also need an open community to build these apps, right? That you talked about, Reflow being one of them that's outstanding. But think of the App Store with Apple, right? We have to have open APIs that go into your system, and somebody could add on features. People like baud rate that write drivers, people like LinkSpring that write drivers and do some really cool things and new apps with it, and have developers like yourself be able to go to school and utilize those APIs. So it's a combination of things. A lot of people today think open is, it's got to be done with Python. Well, come on. That's a technical description of open. I'm talking about frankly, the business side of open and the community side of open. And then the last thing is the community. And frankly, what makes, I think, Niagara most open is because of the community of thousands and thousands of people that utilize it, share, and you've been great. And I compliment you on how you share your knowledge, and that just helps an entire community be open. So I like to think that, just because Niagara is one part of that community, there's all these other products and services and system integrators that have this open ecosystem. And again, John Petsy first wrote that up, and it hadn't changed in my mind to this day. Nobody's convinced me technology can be open, but it's not open unless you have good people dealing with it and you have a community of people that want to share information and solutions.
Spot on. For me, it's really important to get knowledge out there. And so for me, I want to just show people a lot of underneath the hood. So that's why I've got like that little like developer series on the Learning Hub. Like, and obviously, I always preface this, hey, this does not replace the official training, but this is to get your juices flowing to start to explore yourself and then become, a true, certified dev and whatnot. Like, people need to understand that, that a lot of this stuff does take time, and effort, but there are people out there that are willing to provide the information for you and put it in a tangible way for you to actually understand. Education's been so important for me to want to educate the world.
And you bring up the point that people that are contributing to this now, right? You're contributing to it. Look at all the YouTube videos that are available now. And it's caused us to rethink our training. The way we have to train in the future is going to be a lot different. It's not going to be sitting in a classroom for a week. Excuse me. It's going to be online training where you might do it at self-pace. That's the thing that's really changing the industry right now, is the technology to understand and learn stuff. And we ask young people coming out of school, how do you learn? And the first thing they tell us is go to YouTube, right? So we have to embrace that learning technology as well.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, I think a lot of self-pace is really I think is really good. I think certain things, will have to, flesh out over time. Trey and I were talking about, what a self-paced developers course would kind of look like, and how to really kind of, obviously the big thing there would be like the use of, large language models for assistance, right? Which is not something that we really want to do, but, you kind of, in some case, in some instances, you kind of have to understand that in the real world, some of those people are actually going to, to want to do it. So, I've kind of given my feedback on like, hey, how about, before you come to the class, take a Java test. That way we can see, they can measure your proficiency ahead of time, because especially if you see them pass with flying colors on there and then bomb like in person for like a developer's thing, then obviously like, okay, something hasn't, matched up there. But like, cause I actually took in November, Ed, I actually took the in-person developer certification. So instead of the 10 4-hour days, we did basically, we did it all in 5 days, and then had the test, the last part of that Friday, and then I stayed that extra night and then drove back home. But yeah,
and I got to say, there's one thing about in person, because you're not getting training, but you're building a relationship, right?
Yep.
And somebody you build this trust relationship and this friendship, and then you start to collaborate, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't get that online as much as you can in person.
Yep.
I don't think so. So I think there's a combination of both where you can do that. And the other thing we do find when people come like to our classes here in Richmond, we talk to the students, they share so much outside of the training, right? They learn from each other, because somebody might have a stronger background in BACnet, somebody's got a stronger background in Python, whatever it might be. There's a lot more shared information going on than what we're necessarily presenting in the classroom. So I still like it. We do get a lot of pushback for people being out of the field for a week. That's tough to do.
Yep.
I think it's a good investment personally. But again, some people have different ways they want to learn. So I think it's going to change in the next couple of years. I think we're going to see combinations of both.
Yeah, and more importantly, I think from the trainer's perspective, I think some of us each bring a unique, we can bring a unique feel to our classes. I do hit BACnet quite a bit. In the class, and I do talk about more from a technical perspective than probably other trainers do for that, because like I've been in it. I've BACnet is one of those things where we had to learn it, and especially learning it from the ground up, from the beginnings of BACnet even to what it is now. Those things you can't learn just regularly in the training as well. You have to learn it in the field. There's so much
absolutely
that happens. And you're talking about Python. I agree. I'm not a fan of Python, to be honest. I don't really care if people use Python, whatever. Node-RED, I've seen a lot of right now. I'm actually working on some Node-RED stuff with an integration to Tritium directly, where if people want to start using that, like to have like a kit control, and have it actually, you can load the JSON file into Niagara, and it would actually build the wire sheets for you. I'm trying some of that out just to give people different options. I mean, I think kit control is easy, but some people find it a little more difficult.
But
oh, go ahead.
Well, I think we have to change our thinking, right? And we have, just like AI. I mean, I've seen quite a few demos right now where we're able to take, sequences of operation and take AI and create program objects or create BQL. So I think there's so much room. We have to have this room to be able to adapt and to change. And the cool thing is, I can tell you, our engineers on the fourth floor are really open to that. They want that to happen. They want to make that automated and make it easier for everybody, because they relish that. They don't want it to be hard. But when you build a framework, the framework's got to be is complex, but then we have to put some shells around it to make it a little bit easier, right? Like you said, bring in stuff that we really want to be able to take and read documents. And we're working with Lawrence Berkeley Labs on that right now in some of their stuff that they're doing, and saying, hey, at some point, we want to be able to read these documents. A consulting engineer writes a specification, and we want that specification to convert directly to code. That's kind of nirvana for us in the next few years or so.
Yeah, and I think that in some cases it's absolutely feasible. I think that there's still some things to be fleshed out. Like I'm getting a lot of people who are messaging me on LinkedIn for assistance. Like they're starting to use AI, and they're starting to make program objects to start. And then they're like, well, hey, I'm getting stuck here. I'm like, well, you need this. Well, how do I know that? I'm like, well, I know it because I've been doing it, but I've been giving a few of them some tips and tricks, like, hey, download Java decompiler and throw the modules in there, and then you can actually just grab the API. And like, as I've said a lot of times, even on some of my LinkedIn videos, the help documentation is absolutely important. You can go to Baja Docs, you can copy the API, you can paste it into the LLM, and then it can help massage your code that way. So now it acts as an assistant. I still want people to have more. One of my fears about AI in general is that, and it's a way of thinking that I need to change myself on, is like, I still want people to be capable of correcting things when issues arise, right? So for example, you and I have been in the controls industry. Well, damn, now that I just did the math, almost 100 years combined. Now, obviously you have 20 more years on me than I do. But 80 years combined experience there. That's a lot of experience to have. And we've seen a lot of stuff, and we've done a lot of stuff. But when you have these newer guys that are coming in that don't necessarily learn the ways of old, because, some of it was baptism by fire. And I'm not saying that that's correct, but that's the way that we learned. Sometimes you have to learn it from the ground up. The Honeywell engineering manual for building automation controls,
Right.
the great
manual.
right? Yeah. Like that's a great one. And I give people a copy of that, when they take my class, because I want them, like, look, you need to read this. Like, I don't care if it says the last printing was like 1997 or 2001 or whatever it was. You need to read it, because that it still applies today regardless. It's some of those fundamentals that the younger generation doesn't necessarily have, that I would like to somehow, I guess, improve faster. And I think that's where, like, Phil, I think Phil's classes happen that, can go that way too. But I still want people to have some knowledge. They know, so they understand not only the how and the why, because the why is easy to figure out. It's the how. They could fit. They know the how, but the why is the thing. Why
You're right. It's dangerous when you just upload a sequence and you say you do it, but if you don't understand that the free stat's on the wrong side of the coil and those sort of things, there's some real basics there that you have to even be able to fix it and change it. So it's still going to require it's going to require knowledge, and I do believe that people still have to have some basics, right? You still have to understand, I think, psychometrics, right? Mm-hmm. You still have to understand some certain fluid flow, and to be able to really tweak some of this stuff. Okay, so I think that, and then also what we're looking at, we have to provide some bumpers, right? Some guides within Niagara to use the AI. We want to make it easier so that you can ingest AI and use it. So I think we want to have a framework. We have a framework there now. We want to make sure that AI is part of that framework, and to make it easier to use. So you're not having to experiment yourself, right? And you're going to see some of that as we come out with N5. We're looking at all that right now, and we want to make it easier for people to consume AI and use AI and not have to, be out there on their own. We want to make it available for the masses, is what our role is now, and that's what we're working towards the future. So.
And I think, also in that respect is cybersecurity too, right? Like,
yes,
one of the things about AI that people may or may not like would be is that how secure is it? And even then, obviously Tritium just had to come out with some patches just recently, for some vulnerabilities that they had, which, Tritium quickly resolved. Like, it was, the amount of effort that Tritium took to went and correct that stuff very quickly was nothing short of impressive. I mean, and Tritium's always on top of that. But how is Tritium's strategy, speaking of with cybersecurity in mind, how is Tritium's strategy evolved with that?
Well, obviously, let me tell you, first of all, cybersecurity is our single largest R&D line item. Okay. So we take it seriously. Look, we find our own stuff sometimes. You have to understand, we not only find it, I mean, third parties find it, but we have a great team here that that's their full-time job to do the cybersecurity side. And I was just with a customer today, a very large customer with mostly IT people in the room, where we're having this discussion. Look, we have to work with the Department of Defense. They've got the risk management framework. We have to work with the GSA and FIPS. We work with banking institutions. We work with, if you're on the same network with credit cards, there's something, we have to work with guidelines from the payment card industry. So we're sweating the details of multiple players in the market, right? Multiple verticals to be able to do that. So, and not only Tritium, but I will tell you, Honeywell as a whole has got a fantastic infrastructure to help with cybersecurity. So just because somebody else finds it, it doesn't mean we haven't found a lot already. And by the way, the guidelines for those things that came out, we had guidelines that if you follow the guidelines, that wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of things that's why we provide these guides to people to do the hardening. And of course, we do cybersecurity by default. You have to turn stuff off. Yep. Because when it gets loaded up, it's super secure by default. And that's our mantra going forward. And I think we've kind of helped the industry. I think we're leading the industry in building automation with that. And we really share the types of things that we do. So it is front and center. As you said, it's only going to get tougher. And that's why we have to update. And we work with third parties, right? We work with Linux. So if Linux has an issue, guess what? We have to upgrade the software because Linux has an issue. We work with Windows. And if Windows has an issue, we have to make sure that we follow multiple OSs, Java vulnerabilities, that type of thing. So we have people, we're eyes wide open here. So.
Yeah. I think that's, that was my thing. Like, I've seen some people on LinkedIn, they are like, oh, you heard of this. Well, first off, that was months ago. One thing I talk about a lot in my trainings when I get to the cybersecurity portion. So typically that's either end of day 3 or beginning of day 4, depending upon how fast the class works. I showed the Tritium trainers this. There's a website called Shodan.io. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Very much so.
So showing people Shodan.io and just typing in Tritium. We actually in one of the classes, I was like, imagine if someone had, just the default credentials and doing that. And obviously in the days of AX, and even R2, that was kind of the thing, right? That was one of those where people just kept default credentials, not thinking anything of it. And obviously N4, really changed the game with that. We're like, multiple, we're making everything super accountable. And and I don't really hear about many, Niagara systems, having a breach. Speaking of, of secure, when we talk about like techs and trend and transformation, edge controllers, right? That's a real big thing now, regardless of who has it. Obviously a lot of people know who I am. We don't really advertise it a whole lot because that's not what the podcast is about. But, LinkSpring, we have our edge product line that we use. We were one of the first out there with a Niagara OEM. KMC has, I think it's called Fusion now, I think is what it's called. I'm trying to remember, but there are quite a few. But speaking of that kind of thing, like, is there anything that excites you right now in the technology stack, like MQTT or backnode over SC? Is there anything in that line that you're just really, you just get excited to see it?
Well, I mean, I think edge control, as you brought up, I think that things are getting smarter at the edge, right? We heard the term IoT and IoT this and IoT that, but when you have a sensor that phones home via MQTT, okay, that's I hate to say it, but it's kind of so what in the fact that you need a lot more than one sensor. If you just want to look at one sensor, that's fine. But we have to think of systems of things. And the exciting part is that with the powerful new processors out there, we can run Niagara at the edge, right? Mm-hmm. and it becomes very powerful, and it also becomes very secure, right? There's, BACnet SC is out there. Frankly, a lot of people are struggling with it from a training standpoint, right? And then you have to have certificate management that comes with BACnet SC. So, frankly, we have a lot of customers. We have some of that stuff built in. So that's what Fox S is all designed to do. So we can literally take encrypted connectivity down to the VV box level with Niagara. Some people want to use a BACnet, and BACnet SC is a big step forward because BACnet's not encrypted. That's why we have multiple ports on a Jace, so that people can bring in the unencrypted into one port, and guess what? When it leaves, it's encrypted. Yep. So that's why we can be in a lot of locations that other people can't. So I think the cool thing is things are evolving. I think the problem is keeping up with it. So, as this technology changes, people have to learn about certificates and certificate management. And I know you've taught that. James Johnson spends a lot of time in his advanced classes teaching people about certificate and certificate management. And we're building that into the Niagara framework. So you can do your certificate management internally yourself. So, and look, I'm not a cyber trained person by any means, but I know what resonates with IT departments and with key mission critical customers that I speak with multiple times during a week. And they're all saying the same thing. We have to train people to understand cyber better. And I think that's something that I think we're going to have an issue with, because just trying to understand how to do sequences of operation, get buildings commissioned, but you also now have to look at cybersecurity down to the thermostat level. Simple as that. And that's what we're spending a lot of time trying to, make that easier for SIs to manage the cybersecurity of the product line from end to end. That's kind of our goal. So getting it smaller and then getting it to the cloud. A lot of people are not ready for the cloud, but a lot of people are. And how do we get encrypted data outside of Niagara to get it to an API that somebody can consume without having to go to their building? They can go to another third-party cloud to get that data. So it's a lot going on in the industry right now. But what we still have to remember is we still have to make the buildings work first, right? Yep. They still have to be comfortable, and that's one thing. Paul Oswald, who was an early Tritium employee, then started his own hugely successful system integration business with ESI that was purchased by CBRE. Paul used to say, listen, you still get hot and cold calls every single day. If it's cold in a building, it's a dumb building as far as the tenant is concerned. So we have to combine this technology that's secure and safe, but still make sure the buildings are comfortable and the mechanical systems are working. And I'm afraid that maybe the technology do we have to rethink what mechanical systems look like? Are VAV boxes going to change? What's going to happen there? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it could change. Is how we distribute air going to change? What are we going to do? Look what they're doing in data centers where they're putting cold plates on chips now. They're not running air across, nope. Chips. They're putting cold plates on there. So that's a whole new way of looking at things. So we've got a lot on our plate as an industry. That's where we have to make sure that we're good stewards of that. And I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but I just think that it's going to take a big teaming effort that, as an SI, you have to have somebody that's really good with certificate management and cybersecurity, but you also have somebody back there that understands how to do, and understands what an old multi-zone unit looks like and how it works, and understand the psychometrics of an air washer in a textile mill. It's going to be a lot more teaming effort, I think, to make projects work in the future.
There's a lot to unpack there. It really is. And I think that you're right. Quickly, for BACnet over SC, I think one of the big things now is, the pushback of whose responsibility is for the certificates, right? And some people are like, oh, well, the vendor should be it. And I'm like, well, that's that's idiotic. I'm like, why would the vendor be responsible for your certificates, right? Like, you're the one that wants the system. You're the one that needs to maintain it. It's a matter of changing the perspective. And now finally, yes, we have to learn another thing. Okay, well, guess what? That's all about controls, right? We wear multiple hats, and that's the beauty of controls, because we don't just learn about the mechanical system. We have to learn mechanical, electrical, and even, on the IT and OT side, we have to be those experts to be able to push forward and to make things work. And like, even like with VAVs, people are trying to become smarter, right? There's the thing now is they're saying the engineers have oversized VAV boxes for years, and now the turn down can be over 400 to 1 by using these smart control valves and this, that, and the other. And it's kind of interesting to see how it's like, oh, well, we've done the way of things. So I do think that mechanical systems will change to a point, but I don't know if we have enough people that can make it work the way that, we'd want to right now. So I think if they, building things piece by piece, and you were right? They're going to consider it a dumb building if they can't maintain temperature, right? Like, if you are, if you're really good at if you're trying to overcomplicate the system, but you're not covering the basics, what good are you to the customer if you can't do that? I think that's a really good way to think about it.
I got to interject
Yep.
and I'll bet you that's where AI is going to really help us, right? Because it'll look at building patterns and uncomfortable areas. I think AI is going to help us point out those issues, maybe figure out what some of those issues might be. So I'm really looking to see what we can do with comfort levels and AI, like an optimum start stop, right? What can AI do to help us do better for doing optimum start stop, ventilation rates, and those sort of things. So I'm hoping that's going to help solve that problem. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, you're absolutely fine. So. Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's it's a very good point. I want to have I'll have an offline conversation with you about Controls Con, and I forget who it was that was doing a presentation. And I want to get your opinion on it, but it'll be that again. That's a whole other conversation. I have a billion questions for you, and I'm just trying to like pick them out, at a time here. It's not we haven't had many people in here that have had the that we've had the longevity of being with being with one company for so long. But obviously you have a legacy about you, and obviously you've moved more, you're doing a lot of mentoring right now as well. And obviously, and honestly, that's kind of why I got into the position that I am, because not only do I still show the people that old dogs can do new tricks, but I spent my time on the ladder. I don't want to do that anymore. I still have to do it every now and then, not too much, but I want to, I want to mentor the community and make sure that they are fostered enough that they're going to support this until hell, I retire. I don't know if I'll ever retire fully, but I'll just get bored. But, I definitely, for the next 50 years or so, I guess I'll be 90, so I'll probably be dead. But I guess at least for the next, 30 years for me, I want to make sure that, people still, still enjoy controls like I do. So what would, for advice purposes, what kind of advice would you give to like, a 25-year-old entering the control space today?
I think first of all, I think it's an absolute great industry, right? It's an industry that, there's you can go a lot of different ways. If you like the cyber side, you can do that. If you like the mechanical side, if you like the energy side, I mean, I think today the key is to find good people to work with. Now, people ask me, how can you do 50 years at a company? And I answer that because I've always, in my entire career, worked with a group of people that were really good and really helped me, and I was able to help back. I just always work with a good team of people. And I think if I'm somebody new and I'm 25 years old, look for a company where you see that teaming first. It might be a great technology, whatever, but kind of feel the people out. Is it going to be a learning environment? Is it going to be an environment where people, frankly, have fun? People like each other. And throughout my entire career at Honeywell in the Richmond branch, what a great organization we had. Then I moved into doing channel management at Honeywell with the original BCI channel and working with 100 system integrators and a great team there because it was something new. Then I came over to Tritium, and what a fantastic environment. And a lot of people have come and gone at Tritium. People have started at Tritium and moved on and been successful at other things. But it's always been a core group. And as new people come in, we've been able to keep that aspect of the company where everybody is just as important as everybody else. Open door. People can speak their mind. People can help each other. And people all want to help the customers. So that's what I would tell somebody. Look for what you want to do in the technology side, but don't underestimate the people aspect. I see a lot of young people changing jobs a lot. And I mean every year. And maybe that's good, maybe it's not. But I wonder, are they changing jobs because they just couldn't find that good work environment? Or did they really just not like that technology and moved on to something else? So just be careful. Think about the company you want to. There's so many great companies out there, but make sure you're in an environment that's going to help you learn. But also you have to be able to. That's why I feel it's important to me to mentor people back. I got to get back to this industry that gave me a lot. So it's a lot more to it than just understanding the technology.
You're right. I've had there were three real mentors, actually four, that I've had in my career that I owe, a lot to. Rick Mitri and Chris Walsh, both with who were at Pritchett Controls. Chris is still there, but Rick, I think Rick is either finally retired or I know he went to go form his own engineering company, I think, and now he might be retired. But then, Lee Revis and Jim Thomas, with ECS,
great people. They were one of my original BCI contractors. Jack Connell and Lee started the company, and I signed the paperwork to get them on board when they signed that company. And what an absolute great company, great people and a great environment, I'll say.
Yeah, admittedly, ECS was a lot of fun to be and have the opportunity to work with them, and it definitely was hard to leave that company because I grew fondly of a lot of people, but it was time for me to move on. But I tell people who come into trainings, the first controls company that you go to may not always be the one that is your home. Sometimes cultures change. Sometimes, management style all of a sudden comes in and it creates a different environment. I'm not one of those new ones where people are like, yeah, jump every 2 years and get a bigger salary. I'm like, well, that just shows instability in your, in your work ethic, at least in my opinion. But find your home, which you're right. Like you need to find what your core values are and what you truly believe in, and then find a company that will work, that has those values and maintains those values throughout. Which then can allow you to thrive, because you may have a person that comes in and they're a rock star, but they may have had a bad experience with another company because they just didn't gel well. And so that company may have a negative opinion of you, but this other one's like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. This kid's great. Like, I don't know what you have. And there are people that do get discouraged, from like the first company they deal with, because maybe they had some old guys who want to do some gatekeeping and don't want to teach and whatnot. And, it's those things are hard, but I tell those people not to get discouraged, that they just need to press on, and they'll eventually find their home if they, if they want it. And, it's just one of those things that takes time. It doesn't always happen overnight, but you've had such a success there. I tell you what, I had two more questions about advice and legacy, but I think I want to do a quick lightning round for you. So a couple questions here, and then we'll sign off. It is getting a little late. All right, what's the best conference you've ever been to, and why?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of great conferences out there, and they change, right? You can the conference one year can be great, the next year can. I will tell you the Niagara Summit because and I say that because I saw the Niagara community being born. I mean, the very first Niagara Summit we did in 2004, I saw this unbelievable community of people get together and start sharing. Okay, a true sharing education conference. And there's others out there that are great. Don't get me wrong. ASHRAE's got some great stuff. Realcomm, Realcomm Obicon, good ones. ControlsCon. So it but the one that really I just saw this explosion of community was frankly in 2004. And the Niagara Summits, we try to make them better every year, and it's very tough to do. But that's my favorite. That's my passion, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the one in the Gaylord. I had quite a bit of experience there. Pritchett actually helped with that job.
Yeah.
So
it's a great property, right? And we're in the planning mode now, and we're looking for people that want to speak. Tell us what you want to talk about, but we try to make it purely educational. It's no commercials there, but it's just the vibe there is just amazing. And to me, people share. And there's other don't get me wrong, but that one is one where, like I said, you get more than 1,000 people together, and everybody can share and everybody can learn. Like I said, it's always going to be my favorite.
Well, put me in, Coach. I'll. It's quite apparent. I like to talk, so I'm kidding. I like to talk.
No, we want you, and that's what because we know you contribute. We want to contribute to new knowledge there, right? And this is going to be exciting times. So much has changed since the last. My gosh, look at what AI has done just in the last 18 months. Just crazy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. I like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to it, and also looking forward to Vegas for ASHRAE. Man, I tell you, that's gonna be an interesting one. I'm gonna see how few people actually remember to come to the conference from. Especially, I'm sure all the stops probably come out for Vegas.
We know people do. We frankly had several summits in Vegas, and look, people. We give them time to go do what they want to do, but people, like I said, people were there to learn and understand. And of course, there might have been some people there that went and never showed up for our conference, but I don't see that.
Sure. No, I understand. It'll be interesting because Orlando, Atlanta was great. Chicago was it was too damn cold, Ed. It really was. It was, oh my God, I did not I was 350 still there. But I was like, man, it's still cold. I didn't want to deal with that in Orlando.
It used to be. Used to be every other year in ASHRAE. For many years, the big show was in Chicago because there was so many people there. It was one of the few places that could handle that. And now it's in the rotation. Great city. It is a little bit cold, but
well, there's deep dish pizza there, for sure. I tell you what is one piece of technology, personally or professionally, that you couldn't live without?
I'm going to go back to Google. and listen, the reason I got to preface that, when I came to Honeywell, we didn't have PCs, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Honeywell I got my first cell phone at Honeywell, got my first PC, got my first email, my first browser, and then Google came. And years ago, we had these massive catalogs of data. They were 12 feet wide of all the Honeywell product that we sold on Honeywell controls. That every piece of paper that had to do with the spec sheet, the user guides, and all that, literally was a wall 12 feet long in binders. It changed the game. And I tell people, and I got to the point where, it really helped me help customers. And people don't use it enough sometimes. They ask the question first before they look it up. But I got to tell you, and the other thing that I do a lot of research. If I'm going to see a new customer in new meetings, I look at their business. If somebody says you're going to this customer and they do this, I use that to understand the customer better, understand what their needs are, what what's driving their profits. Same goes with end users, right? What's important about this university? What are this kind of research they do? It helps me help them better. And it's still the number one tool that I use every hour.
It is. I mean, Google is amazing. And now, a lot of browsers are being integrated with AI, right? Like they all have their own now, so you can, you can absolutely find more information that way, which I think is really nice. All right, here's one. I cannot wait to hear for this answer. I've been so excited. I've been so excited to actually ask this question. Like it was actually the first question I thought about when I wanted you on here. What is one myth about Niagara that drives you nuts?
Ooh. That's kind of a tough one because there's a lot of untruths out there. Mm-hmm. Like I'll tell you what it is, and it's a myth. People say because we do licensing and do software maintenance agreements that your Jace is going to turn off after a year, and a lot of that comes from some competition. I had that come up today. As a matter of fact, somebody brought it up. The SI, they used to. There's some people that were saying, oh, if you don't get a software maintenance agreement, your Jace is going to turn off and it's going to die, which is not the truth. You buy a Jace, it works forever, right? It may not have the latest upgraded software, okay, and it may not have the newest files, but it's not going to turn off. So I would say that's my number one pet peeve. Don't hear it as much as we used to, but I got to tell you, for many years, there was a lot of misunderstanding about that.
The last question I have for you is BACnet finally good enough?
Oh, I'm not the one to ask that. And I'll tell you why. Is it good enough? It depends on the user, right? I came up in the lawn days, and it was kind of funny because I was in the lawn and BACnet wars, right? People were fighting. I mean, there were articles being written for lawn, against BACnet against lawn. Look. What works for you? Look at Modbus today. How old Modbus is. It predates LAN and BACnet. I'm not going to say that BACnet is good because we want to make BACnet work as good as it can in Niagara, just like we still do with LAN, by the way. It's not dead yet. And in Modbus. So it's not up to us. That's up to the communities. What's really protocols keep emerging. Modbus went from RTU to TCP. OPC did the same thing. So things are moving on, right? So I don't. Will it be BACnet in the future? I don't know. But I think it's not. BACnet's going to be for one part of the building. Is it ever going to do the lighting? Is it going to do electrical vehicle charging? I don't know. Right now, there's protocols for electrical vehicle charging. Well, you still got to connect to that. I think BACnet is a good protocol. It's well documented. They have the testing. So we want to make sure that we support BACnet the best way we can. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good perspective. I actually maintain that BACnet should actually adapt profiles like LAN did.
Oh, I would, that's one thing about LAN with profiles. You could buy a Honeywell fan coil unit controller or a Johnson fan coil unit controller, and the namespace was going to be identical. And that's something that probably I think profiles are due, put it that way. I really would like to see. I think it would be very helpful. We try to do that with templating and tagging, but if the namespace, even if the namespace was the same, it would make things a lot easier, I think, probably.
Yeah, and I think that would actually help with tagging too, right? Right. A lot of people don't, a lot of people still don't tag, and I try to encourage people. I'm actually working on it's not 100% fleshed out yet. But basically it's a module right now that will scan the JACE for the tag dictionaries that you're using, or that you have installed. So this is prior to actually applying any direct tags. So far, only the implied tags that have been there. And this is regardless of whether it's brick, haystack, or the Niagara Tag Dictionary. But it'll actually scan the system, and based upon the and part of this is AI, but based upon the objects, the name of the objects, it'll give you a list of tags that you can apply to your system. And so, I think things like that will help people a long way, because it can be an arduous process that people don't want to get into.
Yeah, no doubt. And people like yourself, Ellipsa AI, which has they're using AI to do tagging, to go back and add tags. Doing tags up front is a lot easier than having to go back to do it. But I think AI is going to do a lot of that for us as well. Some people seem to think that you can just learn enough and you can tag after the fact. I would like to see manufacturers put tags when equipment comes from the factory.
Yep.
I'd like to see some pre-built tags there, and I know that's been tough. So I do think AI will be smart enough to do some of that. And I think we'll see some more tools coming. We, as you know, we use tag rules and things like that to try to make it easier. I think it's got to get built in from the beginning, and I think we have to do a little bit more of that from the factory, to be honest with you.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think that there's a lot that the vendors can do to help assist. I believe that more tools should be made. I don't think there's enough tools out there from any, from a variety of vendors. And I think that we as a whole, need to be more proactive into making those, that part of lives easier. Like if you want, you see it in specifications, if you want that, then you need to help the industry make that easier for the layperson. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, those are all the questions that I have for you. I hope that you've enjoyed this time on the podcast, and I just say from the bottom of my heart, congratulations. Really great job on 50 years at Honeywell.
Well,
that is nothing short of amazing.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing for the community, and I appreciate the entire community, because frankly, they make my job extremely easy. And also just getting information out there. I just love what our community is, what it's doing, and how it's evolving, regardless of whether it's Niagara. I'm just talking about the smart building community in general.
Yep.
The new energy that I'm seeing out there. I think it's on a really good path.
And that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and keep building the community. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. Actually still kind of fangirling right now. I'm like